It definitely feels like we've had a fair share of films about the challenging supplanting or downfall of power structures this year. The refreshing thing about Conclave is its very specific analysis of one aspect of existing within an ongoing system, namely the shift in moral judgment brought about by an upcoming election. I wonder if anything brought on this train of thought, especially because the main concern surrounding this election of a new pope is the prevention of a blatant warmongering bigot from running away with the election and dragging the entire Catholic Church back into the Dark Ages. Ralph Fiennes oversees the organisation of the conclave and serves as our eyes and ears throughout the proceedings, as he struggles with how to proceed as scandals threaten to undermine the entire process and throw into question what an ideal result would even look like. While a conclave is clearly a lot more exclusive than a general election, the political lobbying is made to be as evocative of partisan politics as possible and the limitations it imposes, particularly with electable candidates. If a legitimately dangerous threat to the entire democratic process and the welfare of the governed people is a frontrunner, who is the ideal opposition? In the build-up to the conclave, it seems the most ideal candidate is still the best choice for the job, in the eyes of the more liberal cardinals. Though a few of them do caution Cardinal Stanley Tucci that appearing too progressive may limit his appeal, and send uncertain voters to the extremist. This appears to be the case when things get started, with moderate candidates drawing the majority of the vote, to the point where the progressives are mostly accused of taking up a vital vote share that, if it went to one of the moderates, would secure them the election and prevent the worst-case scenario they fear from happening. The conundrum here is, can one justify compromising their morals and beliefs in the name of the greater good? Should we really have to only ever settle for the lesser evil? And Conclave does feel like a very damning assessment of the way democracy feels to be restricted by such a procedure, of the way ideals that are meant to be so vital to any leader's credibility are so dismissively brushed aside in the name of appearing electable. Matters of policy and responsibility to the people they serve are too sensitive to bring up during the high intensity of an election, and must wait until it is over and the immediate threat taken care of, despite the fact that the election is only there to decide who will take on said responsibilities. This is one of the most potent aspects of the allegory, that the most vital part of preparing the conclave is the sequestering of the cardinals. The college is closed off, windows and doors bolted, because God forbid that anything going on in the outside world should actually influence voting intentions. It reveals the career opportunist drive of the whole process. It quickly becomes clear that the popular moderates' main flaw is not simply that they are boring or uninspiring choices. Cardinal Lucian Msamati, whose main appeal to the liberal voters is that his diversity would be a surface-level symbol of the Church's move toward progressivism and modernity, and simultaneously a rejection of Cardinal Sergio Castellitto's regressive doctrine, is nevertheless also notably prejudiced in some respects. Not as all-encompassing as Castellitto, but a conservative traditionalist all the same. John Lithgow, on the other hand, does appear to be moderate in policy, but is suspected early on of scandal, enough so that his legitimacy is called into question by Fiennes, while the progressive hopeful Stanley Tucci appears to be in favour of ignoring any blemishes on Lithgow's record once he appears to be the only real opponent to Castellitto, which in turn calls into question Tucci's integrity, whether he's willing to ignore corruption in the name of the greater good, ousting Castellitto and influencing the moderate towards his way of thinking, or in the more selfish pursuit of his own advancement. It muddies the sense of conviction Fiennes once sensed in him. This less-than-ideal scenario is not hinted at being unique to this one conclave either. Citing controversies surrounding past popes, one cardinal declares that it is, frankly, impossible to find anyone for the role who isn't a deeply flawed individual. Conclave has come out in the aftermath of general elections in the US and the UK, where this exact dilemma has been at the forefront for so many voters. While we are technically free to vote for one of more than just two options, we are encouraged to believe that there are only two real choices. On one hand, conservatives indulging in more radical extremist behaviour at every opportunity. On the other hand, the one whose defining characteristic is that they are not an extremist. They appear to have more in common with their opponents than differences, including foreign policy in the Middle East, a distaste for workers' unions, an uncomfortably close relationship with wealthy lobbyists, and just a general sense that they could really care less about the well-being of the people they're supposed to serve. But unlike their opponents, they don't remind you of Hitler every time they make a speech, so they at least qualify as technically left-wing. In the US election, this lack of appeal proved ineffective next to the dogmatic approach of the far right, whereas in the UK we were sufficiently sick of the Conservatives to settle for the alternative. Even this early on after Trump's victory, it seems unlikely that the Democrats will learn anything from their loss, and do anything besides hope that the scenario in the UK will be the same for them in 4 years' time, whereas Starmer's Labour don't seem all that concerned that what happened to the Dems may happen to them in 2029. And why should they? Whether they're in government or not, politicians continue to prosper in the world either party shapes when in government. It's everyone else who is left to worry. And through Ralph Fiennes' character, Conclave appears to be addressing this concern, casting real doubt on the system ever being a force for good and change when it appears to be stuck in an infinite loop of ineffective, self-serving leaders and leadership elections that are founded on ignoring the concerns that the previous leader either ignored or exacerbated. In the end, though, it seems to be a doubt that is alleviated, Fiennes' faith restored, when another candidate offers hope of a better outcome with a powerful plea for unity and peace that inspire the Liberals and sway many of the undecided. It validates the system as being effective and blameless for the presence of bad faith opportunists. If a truly good option is available, that is what the majority will back. This conclusion suddenly puts into perspective that everyone described as a progressive are not described that way because they have new proposals of their own, merely a desire to maintain everything already in place that the traditionalists would threaten to take away. Even their main appeal comes from the fact that they are not the alternative. The presence of extremists and schemers and bureaucrats is seen as just a side effect of a position of power rather than challenged as a systemic problem that enables the power mad. Ultimately, Conclave seems to settle in the mindset that while the cruel and the hateful will always try to seize control and those opposing them will often fail to meet the appropriate standards to push them back, the system in place is still a tool for good and the benefit of the people. Forgetting for a second any allegorical connections to national democracies, it's amusing to see this framed through the Catholic Church, an institution fewer and fewer people seem in favour of maintaining in any capacity. As far as how it does relate to wider democratic process, I'm not sure Conclave's position lines up with the current atmosphere either, which seems more considerate than ever of whether the dismantling of the current system is long overdue.